The Lost Cryptids Conservatory, where we will shatter your reality to bring you closer to the truth.
Welcome to another live show. Our guest is having technical difficulties, so I think we're going to reschedule him for possibly tomorrow or Saturday, which is unfortunate, but hey, it happens. It happens, you know. So, well, we're just going to talk about some things and probably put the link send it somewhere else if someone else wants to jump on here. So Josh, you were telling me about an encounter you took or interview you had.
Yeah, I did. I did an interview for my hide and seek podcast, and I spoke to a guy. He said his aunt and uncle actually had an encounter in California. Basically, they saw two Sasquatch-like creatures cross the road in front of them. He called them a human, and behind these two creatures was a pack of wild dogs following them. Basically, these creatures stopped and looked at him for a minute, and then kept crossing the road, not paying him any mind. But that's basically the short and sweet of it. He gave me a little detail. He said the hair was black, very human-like faces. He said that it sounded creepy. But yeah, that I've heard other encounters where Sasquatch will actually have coyotes or wolves following them around.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's that dynamic of that situation. Are they actually having wolves and coyotes as pets, or using them, or
coexisting? Maybe, I don't know. One benefits the other somehow.
Yeah, I've heard stories of actually Bill, a member of our team, he's seen a wolf running with a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't chasing the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot wasn't chasing it. He said the wolf was running with the Bigfoot, and that the Bigfoot power sprinted away.
Uh-huh.
And, they were keeping up with each other, and then Bigfoot really took off and got a really good lead. But he's very convinced that the wolf and that Sasquatch in particular are, in cahoots or some type of situational relationships going on, more than just happenstance, like a regular animal kingdom. Like when a bear and a wolf or a bear and a fox will hang out with each other. Not necessarily one is a pet of the other or anything like that, but
yeah, I've also, and on top of that, I've heard reports where dogs, and coyotes will act really strange around Bigfoot activity. They act out of the norm of how they usually act. So I don't know. I don't know what could be causing that. Whether it's, there's always that theory on infrasound. There's or the electromagnetics, or maybe it's just the smell. Because there's that report in the Legend of Boggy Creek where they try to send the hunting dogs after this thing that was terrorizing the town, and the dogs took one whiff of it and turned tuck tail and went right back to their kennels. So
That's right.
so it's no telling what it could be that's causing them to act out of the norm.
Yeah. I think it's more intelligence. You have to build a relationship with an animal to get it to, actually be a viable pet or use it as a tool. I mean, you got to train it in some ways. You got to learn to come back to you. You got to learn to listen to you. You got to learn to follow you and all that. So,
and usually something like that, you've got to start them as like a little pup.
The younger the better.
Yeah, exactly. So especially a wolf, they're very, wild. So that wouldn't be an easy thing to do unless it's more of an alpha thing.
You could imprint yourself with the animal too. Maybe that's what they do.
That's
the
true.
Younger, better, because you can train wolves, and even a wild wolf, as a pup, even though it still will be wild with that wild blood, it still can be a little trainable.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful with some things, but being a Sasquatch, you're so much bigger. I don't think the wolf is gonna messing with you, especially if it does smell the odors and stuff, and so because their noses work on so many levels, so they probably can recognize that the Bigfoot is the alpha and stuff like that, and can coexist in a social structure of Sasquatch because wolves group together and make packs, and so it's there. I mean, it's not impossible. Humans did it. That's why we have dogs today.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
Fascinating.
It is. And the whole scent thing, I always hear reports of people, I hear different descriptions, and I believe, some people say like wild onions is a smell. Typically, I hear that in Texas, and there I hear what's the other description, like burnt garbage. Not so much burnt, but garbage that sat out for a while, I guess, and
spoiled or something.
And then a really musky smell. I hear that like from a Florida area, really musky, heavy, almost want to choke you kind of smell. So I feel like the scent is different in different areas, but I think the scent means a lot more than just for it to stink. To me, I feel like they might actually secrete something to cause this smell to kind of either assert a dominance or instill fear or something. But I believe there's a purpose behind it.
Yeah, there's a lot of animals that do it. Bison, they produce a musky type of smell, and when they're irritated and in the rut and stuff, and apes, gorillas do it, the pheromones and stuff. So yeah, if they have pheromones that release like on command or when they go into certain situations, I mean that's a chemical indicator for other animals that smell that. They get a full download of information that it's everything they need to know. Most of the time, they run away. Like you were saying, tracking dogs stop tracking. A lot of the missing 411 stuff is the dogs will stop tracking or refuse to go up the trail, or cower in fear, or flat out act like there's no sense.
Yeah, I've heard that it's definitely interesting.
Oh, it looks like we actually have our guest, so let's bring him on.
Awesome.
Dale, hey, glad to see you.
Yes. Glad to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad we got this technical difficulties straightened out, and we can actually have the original show about you. So,
Yeah, I just had to figure it out and just had to figure this whole thing out and figure out where I was having problems, but I fixed it. Yeah, I've
awesome.
been wanting to go on some of these sites and let people know that I've been one of the lucky ones that have actually been right beside them more than once.
Yep.
I've been dealing with them since I was a young child. About 7 years old was my first encounter. After that, I just seemed to keep having encounters with them every couple of years, and then throughout my teen years and then adult years. Been an ongoing thing since I was a kid, so I seem to be one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, you're on Vancouver Island, right? You grew up there all your life.
Yes, I am.
Yep.
Been there just about all my life. Yep.
And
been in the logging industry since I can remember.
Yeah. So well, why don't you explain a little about the island? There's a lot of sightings on the island and stuff, and then start us with your first actually encounter with these creatures.
Well, the island itself is more forest than it is people or cities. The majority of the island is nothing but forest, and it's wild and uninhabited by people. The east side is where all the cities are, except for one or two way down south. Mostly the west coast of the whole island is nothing but uninhabited raw land. There's only one or two ways of getting in there, by boat or by plane, and that's the only way you can get in. There are no more logging roads going out that way anymore. They all got shut down and closed down, so it's so wild and uninhabited. It's perfect area for them to live and grow because they have plenty of food source galore. They have plenty of water, caves galore during the winter time, which I found they will go to there. Since we do get a lot of wet, cold snow, and when it gets cold here and it snows, it's very damp. It's to the bone. So I can imagine why they will use the caves that we have around here, which are so numerous. It's unbelievable. The population, yeah, I would put them in around 10,000 just on the island alone.
Now that's a big number. What makes you think that? Is it all the cave systems there, or?
Well, between the cave systems and the wild habitat, which is perfect for them, I couldn't see any. There's more humans down on the east side of the island, where the millions of humans on the east side of the island. The west side of the island, it's uninhabited. The west side, up until most of the island is forest. So they have a huge area in order to live.
Oh, looks like we lost him a little bit.
Yep.
He is all the way in Vancouver
For them.
Yeah, we lost you a little bit there, Dale. But
it's very rugged, very raw.
Yeah. So go into your first encounter. How did you discover these Bigfoot creatures?
Well, the whole family was camping at one of the lakes here. We have hundreds of lakes here. Camping. My dad and I were walking up towards, let me see, it'd be about the northwesterly side of where all the campsites were. And we were near the very end of the back end of where all the campsites were. And we could hear what I now know as simian talk. Back then, we didn't know what it was. My dad, being an ex-Marine from World War II, was a pretty brave man. So He took a knife with him into the bush when we heard the simian talk. Him and I both heard it. I was told to wait for him to come back. Now, in the time he went into the bush, up until where the simian talk stopped, and then he came back out, was about 15 minutes. When he came out, he was white as a ghost. Now, I've never seen him ever that scared in my life. He had a death grip on the knife that he had. And when I kept asking what had scared him, so he not a word out of this man. All he could do is he could just barely hand me the knife, letting go of the knife. It was just such a death grip on the knife. It scared him. That day we left, we never went back to that campsite again. It scared him that bad. So that tells me in that time that he was in the bush, that he walked upon at least one or two of them in that bush that made him that scared.
Did he ever go into detail about?
No, he wouldn't say a word until years later, when I come back from when I was about 13, 14, somewhere in there. I'd come back from logging out in camp, and my parents were flipping through a station. That's when they were doing this thing on Bigfoot on TV, and they did some vocals, and I said, that's exactly what we heard. That's it. And from there on, my dad, he just kind of looked up and said, yeah, that's what it was. That's because it showed that was when they first showed the Patterson Gimlin film. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what I seen. Then he walked out of the room and he wouldn't talk anymore about it. He was that afraid to talk about it. Well, years later, after the first encounter that we had, when I was 10, now we were part of the road that was with the town was still basically forested area. So there was lots and lots of bush. Well, in between this one road between Westgate and Gowarno was about a 4.5 acre of nothing but bush. And then in behind that were houses that had gardens and fruit trees and everything. Well, my first time walking down, because I had to go by there in order to see my friends, get to my friend's place. The first time I went down there, I smelt the worst scent I have ever smelt when I was a kid. And this was, I'd say June, July, somewhere in there. Made me want to gag. But I noticed it was only centralized in one area, because once I took a couple of steps past it, the smell would kind of go away. So that told me it was centralized. Well, that only happened that one time. And then after that, when I kept going down by that roadway, I've had stuff thrown at me, basically to block me from trying to go any further, which as a kid, it never deterred me. It just made me more curious. So the more times I kept going down that road, I seemed to started hearing people tell me that there was something in the bush, what they would call, the wild man in the bush. And because everybody knew they were there, but they never worried about it, because the only thing they ever did was raid gardens and raid the fruit trees and go through compost, stuff like that. Well, to me, that was okay. So after a while, it became a habit for me to just say hello to whatever was in the bush, even though we knew it was there, but just never really seen it. It took me about a month of saying hello and waving every once in a while, just for the heck of it, I guess, to gain trust. And one day I come walking down the one side on Westgate Road, and I noticed a huge hand stick out of the bush, cupped. Now, I had an apple in my hand at that time, and I'm heading to my buddy's place. And I walked over to the hand and I looked at it kind of curiously, and I put the apple in the hand, but it dumped the apple out of the hand, kept his hand cut. And I got really curious. So as like a kid, we want to poke things. Hey, all kids will. So I poked my finger in the middle of that hand and I looked at it curious. And I did the same thing. And I noticed the finger poke inside my hand as well. Now, after that, I thought, well, the hand pulled back in. I thought, well, that's kind of a curious thing. Now, I didn't learn what was going on at the time till later on. I figured it out that we were submitting to each other. I had no idea this was going on at that age. It was just something little kids would do out of fear. Well, every time I turned around and said hello, hello, I started noticing it on the one side of the road where the bush thinned out. You could actually see into that forested area. Now, right across the road was a little white house, was a little Polish woman that used to live in there. Now, when the dog incident happened, after me countless times going by saying hello, waving to whatever, to the Sasquatch, when it finally started showing itself to me, there happened to be a dog that lived up the block that really just didn't like me. And I grew up on a farm, so I was pretty good around most animals. I could get along with just about any animal, but for some reason this dog and me just never got along. Well, that dog decided one day it was not going to allow me to get past a certain part of that block, whether I liked it or not. And it turned around and went into a crouch, started snarling and barking at first, and then finally went into a crouch and lunged, would make fainted lunges at me, but still growling and snarling and showing teeth and really scaring a little boy. So it backed me into the bush. Now, as it's doing this, these short little lunge attacks, I know sooner or later that thing is going to try and take a chunk out of me. And what I didn't realize, that after being the submission part, the Sasquatch had walked up behind me. Now, I could hear and feel the ground tremor as it walked up behind me while I'm got my eyes on this dog. And it walked right up within basically 2 feet behind me. Now, I could reach out behind me and I could touch it. I could feel it right behind me. Now, this dog at this point decided it was about ready to lunge at me. It was still snarling and really going crazy since the Sasquatch was there. Well, the thing turned around and it bellered, the Sasquatch. And that beller was so loud, you could feel it going through your whole body. It was so hard. The strength of that yell was so terrific. I had to squat down to avoid most of the waves of it scream coming out at this thing. Well, everybody in the block, I found out later on, within 5 blocks, could have heard the scream. That dog, I never seen turn tail and run so fast in all my life. I've never seen a dog leave an area so fast in all my life. After that scream, right from the Sasquatch right behind me. Now, that dog, I found out from the owner later on that day when he come and confronted me about why his dog raced home into the house and jumped underneath the bed. Wouldn't come out of that bed, from out underneath that bed for a good week. That dog was so scared from that one scream from that Sasquatch. Now, to me, I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. I was elated, like a little kid jumping, going, yeah, you took care of that damn dog. Yeah, I was proud. I mean, I turned around and gave that thing a hug on its leg, which is about the only thing I could wrap my arms around, even though as big as that thing was, which my estimation, I'd say that thing was around 9 feet tall at the time. So now the only to is his leg.
Yeah.
That's about it for a little kid. Now, I didn't know that the whole thing had been watched by this Polish lady across the street. Now, after the dog left and I finished doing my little brave Yahoo, we took care of that dog. All I got from the Sasquatch was it just looked down at me for a minute, turned around, and walked back into the bush. Not another thing about it. It was like, wow. And I noticed the little old Polish lady that had come out from the house. And I walked across the street and I looked her straight in the eye, and my words exactly was, this wasn't a dream. This actually happened, didn't it? And she said, yes. I watched the whole thing, and yes, it actually happened. Which reassured me, and I went, wow. Oh, later on, the coming out of it, I kind of almost stunned that this thing would stand up for me, and for no reason. I couldn't figure out why. But then again, later on, years later, I figured out that because of submitting, I had been under its protection.
Yeah, like apes. Apes do the open palm submitting gesture.
Yes,
And
I've
be
used.
accepted.
Oh yes, and I've used that many times, even later on as a teen and an adult. And yes, when you do that, you can physically see the muscle underneath the skin relax. I mean, it's just, you can see it happen. At that point, you can walk around it, you can touch it, you can stand beside it, you can sit beside it, you can hand it food. It'll take it out of your hand without even blinking. Basically, you're when you've done that, you allowed yourself that kind of a moment with it where you can be beside it.
What do you think about that, Josh? Hearing that.
That's real interesting. I've never heard anything like that before.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't believe I recall anything like that, other than like apes and stuff. It's very fascinating similarities.
Yes. It took me a while because I had to turn around and do some read up on that too myself, and I realized that chimps, gorillas, and a few other of the apes all do the same thing that's similar to that. They do submission.
And when he looked down at you, what did the face look like?
Basically, let me see. When he looked down at me, I would put it kind of like an ape, but more human looking.
Okay. And what about the eyes? What about the eye color?
Oh, brown eyes.
Brown eyes. Okay.
Yeah, there was definite brown eyes. The skin color, what skin was exposed, was like a gray, a dark gray, very leathery. Because I have touched them before on their skin, and it's very leathery skin. It's not soft like ours.
What was his expression again? You said he didn't really react, but did he have an expression of his face?
Well, it kind of, when you look down at me, it's almost like a half grin after me jumping around and laid and giving his leg a little bit of a hug. I got kind of a half-ass grin out of him, and then he just turned around and walked back into the bush.
Yeah, it's very interesting how it shows minimal expression. You know, it's just very serious, or maybe half a grin, but still very serious. And what it was doing, I find that kind of fascinating too.
Well, it shows that they will give you that point of, once you've submitted, that it will give you that. It was almost like an adult almost giving a little kid that stare of saying, you shouldn't have done that in the first place. Look, but with a grin going, yeah, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, very human-like, very It's very human-like, especially the smile and stuff. That's very intelligent. Even the animal world, if two different species of animals could play without attacking each other, that's very intelligent at both ends. So for him to express a grin or something, that does show intelligence and thinking and humor and laughter. So that's very human qualities,
And there,
intelligent qualities.
there's another question here from Facebook user. Did he make any sound when he looked down at you?
No, not a sound out of him. Not one sound, which kind of I expected something, but I never got a sound out of him.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So what happened? You have a lifetime, obviously. So what happened when you were a teen? I know you started to do the forestry industry and
Well,
get into the maybe some sightings there. Do they have any protocols? Like, what's the situation of when a Sasquatch shows
well,
up at the job site?
with us, whenever I was in from camps, and I would go out camping with my buddies, we would hear them in the hills. We would smell them around the camp. They were constant. It was a constant thing. I found them hanging around elementary schools. If there was heavy brush near the schools where they could hide inside, they would kind of hang out near elementary schools way back when. When I was logging and I went to the mainland, I went to Toba Inlet to go to work at Phillips Farm, which is right at the very end of Toba Inlet. It's right from there on, it's nothing but forest. I was logging, we were working on L49 branch, which is a huge valley. It was about a 10-mile valley. And we were up at up where the road came into the valley, and we were logging in this hillside. Now, the one part of the hillside going towards, let me see, that would be east, was had already been logged off. There was no trees, but there was a 6-foot ditch at the top before it led into another valley on the other side. Now, the reason why they put the 6-foot ditch in was in case it rained, so that it wouldn't bring all that. You wouldn't have mudslide coming down because there's nothing left to hold up the hillside. So we're in this little hole. We were logging, and all of a sudden we could hear this hollering way off in the distance. And this is with machinery running. Okay, you got two big heavy machines running. Way back then, it was they were wood spars for hauling the logs up, and then a grapple yarder that turned around and sorted and loaded the trucks. Now there was there were 6 guys down in the hole, setting chokers. There was the rigging slinger, and there was the hooker, all down in the hole. Now up on the landing, there was the loader operator and the one running the rigging for hauling the logs up, plus 2 truck drivers with trucks waiting that were being loaded at the time. Now we could hear this hollering through all this noise of the machinery running, the beeping, the logs being hauled up, the diesel engines blasting loud. Most times you couldn't hear nothing, but you could hear this coming up the valley, actually at quite a fast rate from when we first heard it. By the time it got through the fringe of trees and got near that ditch, that thing was so loud that it was louder than the machines. They just shut the machines off because, well, you can hear this thing over top, screaming over top the machinery.
Wow.
And this was very strange. Oh yeah, this was loud. It echoed so loud in that valley, but the hollering, that thing had to have been hollering a good, I would estimate 3 miles that we could hear that thing. And as it got closer, it got louder and louder and louder. Now it plopped into the ditch. This is when it came out of the forest, went into the ditch. Now, that's a 6-foot ditch. You could still see 4 feet of that thing above the ditch.
Wow.
So that gave you the size of that bugger going through. There were logs that were still in there, that broken pieces that they just didn't worry about why they were in there, were being tossed out of there like they were little sticks. Now, we're talking logs that would take 6 or 7 big, strong guys to even budge. He was tossing those things out of there like they were sticks. I've seen grizzlies throw logs, but not that big. I mean, this thing was massively powerful. And we all seen it. Everybody that was working there, we all seen this thing as it was going through the ditch. And this was after everything shut down. We're all focused on this thing. We can all see it, every one of us. But we were told later on by the bush foreman not to mention it to anybody. It was to be taboo, quiet. That was the end of it.
Yeah. Did they give you any reason, or just flat out,
Nope.
it's your job
Nope.
on the line?
No, they just said, just keep your mouth shut about it and you'll keep your job. It was, for some reason, they didn't want us talking about it.
Well, I mean,
I guess what a lot of it they were worried about, that it would shut down the logging in that area. And back then, the trees in that area were massive. I mean, they were anywhere from, I'd say 1.5 feet to 8 foot through the butt. These were massive trees that were logging out of there, and they didn't want that. They sure the hell didn't want that shut down.
Yeah, I bet.
Eventually, that area did get shut down. They call it a bear sanctuary. So, but that was a good 20 years after I had been working there, and that was a well-known area. It was well known for years of Sasquatch sightings that were already written down in books. So they really didn't want that area shut down.
No, I bet not. It's money on the line. Billions. Couple questions about that.
Sure.
So roughly, he was about 10 foot or so, or more. And he's throwing logs up, and when you say 6 guys to budge those, working in this tree industry, myself, you're talking thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, minimum 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, and he tossed them things out of there like they were sticks. Now it shows how strong and how powerful they are.
Maybe, because we really don't know. I mean, we know that, like chimps are, 5 times, or they say, maybe a gorilla is like 8 times as strong, but a Sasquatch is unbelievably more, powerful than both those combined. So
definitely,
it wonders how what limit is their strength? Like, what could they bench press?
That's really a hard one to judge, because I mean, some of the trees that I've seen them break or had broken off, we're talking 8 to 10 inch trees around thickness that they've snapped off a good 6-7 feet up. There's no way a human can do that. Not even possible. We have a hard time with the small little ones, let alone something that's 8 to 10 inches thick.
Yeah, yeah. So another
That just
question.
shows the power that they have in their lungs.
That's right. So another question about that sighting was
Shoot.
how close would you say he was in the ditch? I'm guessing they're referring to, and our and the
Okay.
second part is go ahead.
Okay. That was about 50 feet away up the hill from where
That's
we
very
were.
close. Yeah, that's right there.
Yeah. Like I said,
Um,
you could not miss it
wow.
because that was a barren hill. There was nothing on that hill except stumps. And they were not, most of the stumps there were no more than 1.5 to 2 feet high. So there's no way you could not miss this thing.
Yeah, definitely. The second part of that question was our daytime sightings on Vancouver Island. Is that happen regularly?
Yeah, actually, I found most times that you'll spot them is anywhere between 10 o'clock in the morning and about 3 o'clock. You'll see them in that time frame. Most of the time I've ever seen them and wound up getting close enough to them was around 11 o'clock in the morning, which is strange. It's a strange hour, but that seems to be one of the magic hours
Well,
during the daylight.
for animals that starts to warm up a bit more during the 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock period, and a lot of animals are active during that period. Could
Oh
be
yeah.
that. Talk a little bit about these caves. You've done a little bit of cave exploring yourself, and how big are these caves? How deep down do they go?
Well, a lot of the caves that I've gone through will go for. I've only gone in about 2 miles in, and yet they've still gone further in. I've never hit the back end of some of these caves just simply because it's just I don't have the equipment to go the rest of the way through. You can only go so far with what you have, and usually I only take a flashlight, a little bit of climbing gear, backpack with a little bit of food in it. That's about it. So you can only go so far. But I found this through some survey maps, because some people have been through them. These caves will go anywhere from a couple of miles to 10 to 12 miles and sometimes further.
Well, I mean that's massive cave systems. That's not. We're talking 2 miles in. That's a lot. That's deep in, and you're talking
It
more than
is.
that. You got
Oh yeah.
passages, side passages. I mean, who knows?
I imagine it's much bigger further in too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially if
So when
you say there's 10,000 that they've got to be hiding somewhere.
and that would definitely help a population to reach 10,000, especially on the island. And Native American legends, go back and say that they're on the island. A lot of legends.
Well, we've had through the native culture here, they've had been discussing Sasquatch for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they said long before any white man even stepped on this island, they were dealing with them back then.
Yeah. Do you go ahead, Josh?
I was going to say Facebook users got a real good question there.
Yeah. Just read my mind. Do you feel they show an interest or concern with the logging operations?
Well, they will. If it's in a sensitive area, like I've seen, where they made almost a permanent home, they will almost defend it. I've seen a lot of equipment destroyed, trucks that have been, for some reason, had hoods, doors ripped off. I've seen 45-gallon fuel and oil tanks tossed about, smashed to pieces. It's like No bear can do this. We know this. There have been footprints around equipment that have been destroyed because of the logging. Yeah, I think they get a little angry about somebody sticking their face in where it don't belong, especially when they have young nearby as good habitable area and food sources. Yeah, I could see them really wanting to take care, trying to chase you off from destroying any more of that habitat.
Do they ever mess with any of the heavy equipment when y'all aren't around?
Yeah, during certain times of the year, I've seen them turn around and rip doors off.
Oh, wow.
I've seen windows totally smashed. I've seen dents in some of the equipment that you're going, well, it wasn't like this yesterday. What happened?
And does this happen when you guys are not working? No one's on the job site? Has anything happened, attack or anything that you know of during the
Well,
day, during
I
operation?
found the only time, other than the odd rock, I've known operations to stop because they were getting pummeled by rocks. They couldn't work because every time turn around there was a boulder being chucked at the machinery. They had to shut down and stop doing what they were doing and just get out of the area.
And when you say boulder, like how big are you?
We're talking the size of your head and bigger being tossed at machines.
Wow.
Yeah,
you got a boulder the size of your head hitting the machine. It's going to dent the hell out of that machine. The bigger the boulder, the more destruction it's going to do to that machine.
Yeah, you could take out these machines. Actually, hit the right area on it.
Oh yeah. Now I've known. I've been called in more than once from areas when certain times of the year, especially when salmon are going up rivers and stuff, where there's an active landing being used. They've been known to come into that area while you're trying to work, trying to get you to back away from wherever they're trying to get at the food source is, which is pretty close to some of the rivers, with some of these landings are pretty close to them. They'll try and stop you from working because they're worried about their food source.
Right.
I've been called in more than once to investigate an area because these guys said, well, we could smell them through here. We know it's more than one because it was in 3 or 4 different spots that we could smell them. And you'd hear them the odd time, and then the odd time you'd see where we had a stack of logs shoved over, and it's like, well, it's like they're trying to get us to stop doing something, and it's like we're talking big stacks of logs that are being shoved over, so that you got to stop doing what you're doing to run over to that part to see what the hell is doing that while they're off going through the landing area. And yeah, they do they do stop logging up to a point when they see the need to. I've been amazed at what they can do.
Facebook users got another really good question.
Let's see. Have you? My question is, have you ever heard of the industry or companies hiring armed people to take these out?
I've heard of that a couple of times in some of the camps, but they could never find them, which is strange because I seem to have no problem running into them whether I'm alone or with people. Mind you, I do know what I'm looking for when I go out in the bush. It's not like I'm tracking an animal going, well, there's a track, but we don't know how fresh that is. I know this one company hired 3 professional hunters to go in this one area because they just were having so much trouble. And they thought, well, if we hire these guys, maybe they'll kill them off, and we can go back to business. Well, those guys went into the bush. 3 weeks later, they came back empty-handed and couldn't figure out why they couldn't catch anything, why they couldn't keep sight of anything. They had 3 sightings, but not enough time to bring the rifle up and bear down on it to shoot it, because they moved so quickly in the bush. What most people don't understand is when they really want to move quickly in the bush, they use all 4s, just like a regular ape, which increases their speed even tenfold. They're very fast. What you would have trouble struggling through bush, to them is nothing. Just minor inconvenience, and they can scoot through it quicker than you could.
Yeah, exactly. So here's that question: have there been any attacks on the actual personnel or actual people going missing, disappearance?
Most times when we have people missing out in the bush, we don't really assume that it's Sasquatch, because we have a huge concentration of wolves, cougars, bears on this island. I mean, it's just there's so many others that could eat you.
What about the logging industry? Has
Any
there been
people that go missing, because most people that live on the island understand that it's. What was that?
I said I think his question was referring to the logging industry people, like on the job sites. Have you heard about disappearances or actually people being attacked physically?
No, I've never heard of that at all. Really, if it comes down to it, they would rather not do a confrontation with people if they can help it. I mean, it would have to be very rare circumstances for them. For them, I would think it would be more of a revenge thing if it ever came down to that. Like, say you shot one, killed one. You and your buddy are out in the bush. Well, yeah, I could see them wanting to get even. I could see people disappear, and I could see people dying real quick and easy. They're a very powerful creature. They're smart. They're very smart. They're very intelligent. Give them enough time, they can learn our language. For us to learn theirs, well, they'd have to learn ours first for us to understand what they're saying in their language, because they have their own meanings. It's the same with the glyphs. I have no idea what they are yet. I still try and figure out what the glyphs are all about. What a lot of the structures are all about.
Yeah, a couple questions. Have you heard of them using English or any English words? And then, what is your opinion on these structures and the glyphs?
Well, I know they've used the odd native word, because here in the island we have about 6 or 7 different dialects of natives. Depends on which branch of the natives they are. But I have noticed, because I've been around them for so long, that you will catch the odd native word mixed in with them, especially when you're on closer to the west coast of the island, because if you're around it enough, they're going to learn it, because they're great for mimicking. Some of the creatures that they can mimic, they're mimicking them, but it's a deeper, brassier tone to it, so it's not the creature itself. Same thing with owls. I mean, how many owls have a really super deep, brassy voice? They don't. And I've heard it lots of times out in the bush.
No, exactly. I've actually encountered what I thought was mimicking, and it was an owl, and it sounded like a 500-pound owl or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
It
the
was very
odds are that
weird.
it's not an owl.
No,
They're great.
no.
They're really, really good at mimicking. I've known them to mimic cougars, even though, with cougars now, we have one of the largest populations of cougars on this island. Yet you don't see them all over the place, but we have the largest in the world of them on the island here. It shows you how much wild space there is on this island.
Yeah, because generally they need a lot.
And there's a lot.
To roam.
We have a huge, huge population of wolves. Yet they're not going into the cities because there's still so much wildness out there. More than enough room for Sasquatch.
Yeah, especially with all these underground caves and stuff. Who knows how far they go and how deep into the earth they go, and if they connect to other caves, maybe lead to the mainland. But we got some questions for you. So, have you ever
Sure.
experienced wood knocks when you initially enter an area? What's your opinion on these wood knocks?
Yes. I've actually used them.
Or when you leave an area too.
I've heard them. Knock back. An answer. Well, now anytime I've used wood knocks, it's more of a signal that you're trying to know where they are and possibly get them to come closer. Now, I've used a series of 2 to 3 with 2 and waited a couple of seconds for an answer and gotten answers. Each and every time I've used this series of 2, 3, 2. And each time I've done this, they've gotten closer and closer and closer to me. Because you can hear them, how close they're coming to you by how close the wood knocks are.
Yeah,
I've used this more than once. And it's
go ahead.
To me, it's just a sign of language for them. I think.
Yeah,
like what they would say, Indian smoke signals. Tells you where they are and how many people just by the type of smoke signal.
Yeah. I think it's exactly more of a signal, not necessarily advanced communication or anything that means a paragraph worth of communication, but basic stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, they use it fairly regular.
So what about these glyphs? A lot of people say that they're making these glyphs. A lot of people say that that's bull crap. It's just sticks on the ground. What's your experience with that?
Well, with some of those now, I've been in areas where there's no trees, little glens that are part of beaches, where there's sand. There's no trees, and I found glyphs. Now, to me, that's giving information, possibly of what's there or who's been there. But this is areas where there's no trees, and even if a good strong wind blew, there'd be no way that those sticks could get there or be stuck into the sand like they were. I've found them on some sandy beaches, stuck into the sand and shaped into I don't know, some kind of lettering sign. And you know that there's been nobody there because there's been no other footprints. These are just, it's just like, wow. I've tracked animals for years. I know one track from another, and deer don't do this, bear don't do this, cougars and wolves don't do this. So there's only one creature that can do this besides people. And most people will not leave a sign saying, "Oh, there's fishing good fishing here." A good fishing hole is a good fishing hole.
Right.
You just say it by word of mouth, but you don't leave a little sign out on the ground. I found glyphs on the ground where there's been really good fishing. So
Yeah, we now see like that might be more advanced communication because when you talk about glyphs, that's actual language and stuff, and humans have used glyphs like the Egyptians and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah,
and these lettering runes. People speculate, they're using their rune lettering, their Chinese lettering and stuff. So I think there's just so much out there, and we are speculating a little bit. But there might be something that we are finding. But matching them up to the actual human glyphs and stuff like that's going to take a lot of time, or maybe a computer algorithm in AI could do that for us. That would be interesting if someone out
well,
there could do that. Be a lot faster.
yeah. I think really the only way to learn what a lot of those glyphs mean would be to teach one to speak English so he could tell you himself what the hell they mean.
Right, because they could be their own glyph language, and we would have no reference to it. So, again, we don't know. Maybe they're not
Yes.
making glyphs; they're making the designs, and they have their own meaning.
It's just like with the runes, we never knew what the heck they meant. You could see them and you go, well, what is it saying?
I believe the most of it is unknown and lost, and that's a very ancient system.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on what they are? I know you've been talking a lot like they're apes and stuff, but what's your opinion on like say them being the Nephilim or
No,
a
I
tribe of
would
people?
I would think they're a very highly intelligent ape. I mean, after all, we are apes ourselves. And look at
Right.
us.
Are they more human-like, or are they actually more animalistic-like? Because when I
No,
when I
I
use apes, I use
think they're
animals. The
I
animal
think
side.
they're right in between. I think they're kind of in between. They're their own kind. I mean, they can be very animalistic at any point in time, but they can be gentle and kind, just like we can. They have families. They care for their young. I've seen many of their young. I've held their babies. I've been amazed at what they can do at the age they can do. But then again, you look at, if you study apes on what we know of apes now, from when they're young and what they're able to do, the young, and you look at the Sasquatch baby, it's almost the exact same. I mean, they have a certain period where they're helpless like we are, like all babies are, and to a point where they start learning to use their muscles more and being able to do more, just like every other child and baby, except there's more ape than there is human in there. I mean, it's more animalistic, but they're just so highly intelligent. They're very smart.
Mhm.
They'll work as a team for hunting. They'll work as a team in families. They'll have a babysitter. That's one thing I learned. There's always one watching the young. always. Maybe not right beside it, but always within earshot of hearing that thing cry. There's always one.
And it makes sense, but I gotta ask the question, the hard question. You said you held the Sasquatch baby, so I gotta put it out there because now a lot of people are gonna be saying, "Well, that's just bull crap." But
No, well,
explain the encounter. Is
okay. With that one, I was working in a valley here on the island called Nemkish Valley. We were spacing trees. Now that's when you leave one tree and you cut everything else around it 12 feet within a 12-foot distance. Now, the way I was laying trees, which is the way the forestry wanted you to do it, was in squares, but 3 tiers up. Now, this is precision falling. It's slow until you figure out a method that will speed it up, which I figured out because I found the Sasquatch in the area that I was facing were using. Now, the reason why you use a 3-tiered system of squares is that any predator has to come in from the top. Now, in doing that, it leaves time enough because of the 3-tiered system. There's enough room underneath for the young thing to actually get away. Any predator has to come in through the top. The young can get away underneath. And this was a forestry practice that forestry wanted done all the time. They wanted acres and acres and acres of these darn squares. But for the most part, the spacers don't do it because it takes too much time. It's precision falling. Well, at the time, you have a cut trail beside where you're working to get in and out of the bush. And I happened to run into a baby Sasquatch, which was in one of these squares. Now I'm looking down at this thing as I'm walking by because you can't miss them. Once you see them, you can't miss them. They're dark in colored. They're small. They're usually curled up into a ball, sleeping. I happened to walk by and look down and spot it and went, "Oh!" As I looked up, I seen these little brown eyes looking straight up at me, and I went, "Wow, now isn't that cute?" Now I'm still on my way up to where I was working. This was about 9 o'clock in the morning, I guess, because it took about an hour to get up to where I'd stopped walking up the cut trail I'd left. Well, while I'm standing there looking down at this little Sasquatch baby lying there looking up at me, I heard one twig snap, and I turned my head and I spotted a cougar. Now the cougars smell in the air. Now with the Sasquatch, they have a very faint, musky odor, but you can smell them. It's just like any other animal. Bear has a smell. Deer has a smell.
Squirrel.
Elk has a smell. Cougars have a smell. You can smell them. And like with most cougars, they can smell young. They can smell what they are. They're not stupid. They see an opportunity, they're going to go after it. Well, I thought, well, maybe I should just walk away and leave. And I took 2 or 3 steps, but keeping my eye on the cougar, and I noticed the cougar started coming over towards where I left the baby. So I went back to where the baby was. Now the cougar stops as it notices I'm standing there now, and I'm thinking, if I walk away, this baby's going to be toast, because sure as shooting, that thing is not going to stop. And it's just at the look at this thing, I would say it would have been basically a newborn. Not going to be crawling away from this thing. There's no possible way. So, being a man the way I am, caring about all animals, doesn't matter if it's what kind it is. First thing I'm thinking of is protective mode. not thinking straight by touching the darn thing in the first place. I picked it up, held it in one arm while I'm watching this cougar trying to back away from the cougar with the young so I could find another spot to put it in. While this cat kept coming and coming and coming to the point where, well, I knew it wasn't going to just go away. So I had to make my stand. So I found there was another square. I'd only walked up maybe, I don't know, 20 feet from where I originally picked it up, put it into a square so I could turn and face this cat that was now about 20 feet away from me, no more than before that it was 50. It's now 20 feet away from me. So now I know it's not going to go away and I'm not going to leave the baby. So I'm in defensive mode at that point. And of course, the only thing I've got on me are files and saw equipment. So I've got my round file in one hand, thinking, this is more than enough to kill a cat if I have to. Now, if you've ever used a round file with a handle on it, that's more. That'll plunge into anything if you need to.
Yep. Yeah. Actually,
that's the only thing I had for a weapon. Well, I was not going to let that little thing get eaten by this cat, no matter what. So I was throwing everything I could at that cat, rocks, sticks, whatever I could find, but not moving very far from this young baby that's just right below and in behind me. Now, this went on for a good, 20 minutes. When finally, I guess, through my yelling and screaming at the cat and what I was tossing, the mama must have heard, because she come flying out of the bush. Now, I'm not looking behind me. I'm watching ahead because I'm trying to keep my eye on the cat. Because every time I turn my head, that thing sneaks up a little bit closer. Being sneaky about it. So I got to keep my eyeball on the cat while I am. And all of a sudden, all I heard was thump, 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 crash, crash. And I seen a big chunk of wood come flying by my head, about a foot from my head, and hit the back end of the cat. And I heard a huge bellow. And that cat just turned around and left the area. It was gone that quick. As fast as that cat could move, it was gone and out of that area. Now here I am going, phew, glad that's gone. Put my file away, turn around and look behind. There's the mama, female. Now she's about 8 feet tall, 7, 8 feet tall, something like that. And I looked down and I noticed the baby's gotten to a point where it's almost standing up, wrapped around my leg, and I thought, okay, I'll just give him to her and then get out of the area. So I grabbed the baby, lifted it up, holding it up in the air towards her, saying, well, I was just protecting it from the cat. There's no big deal. Didn't want to hurt your baby, didn't want your baby, didn't want to do nothing. She took the baby and placed her hand on my chest for a good, 10 minutes, just holding it there, very gentle, before she dropped her hand, turned around with the baby in her arms, and walked into the bush. And what was funny, the only emotion I could think of at that point after she walked away was, man, she was a big one. And that was all that was going through my head.
Yeah. Again, amazing. And what do you think she was doing, placing her hand on your chest? I mean,
I think she was just saying thank you.
Yeah, on your chest. That's kind of interesting. Your heart maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, right over top where the heart is.
Very interesting spot.
That hand covered my chest. And I was not a small man myself, so that's a big hand.
It is.
Yeah, good thing it wasn't around your neck. because you wouldn't be around here on this show.
Yeah,
Now,
that's right.
Do the babies look any different than the adults?
The hair is shorter than the adult. It's, I don't know, their hair is maybe a couple of inches long.
Mm-hmm.
Very soft, very soft. They have a very slight musky odor, very slight. But their expressions are no different than our babies.
So, how tall again? You said it was a toddler size, but roughly how tall? Like a foot or two?
Oh,
What are you talking about?
what the
The baby.
baby? Oh, it couldn't have been any more than maybe 2 feet at the most. Like I said, it was basically a newborn. So, I mean, it's so soft and so helpless. I mean, it could move its arms, it can move its legs, just like any other baby can. It knows what to reach. At that point, it knew when it was reaching for anything. You could see it as the curiosity, the need, the want, whether it was for the mother or whatever it was hanging on to. You could see the trust, the gentleness in the brown eyes. It was just, it would melt your heart to just look at its face like you would with a baby, a regular baby. It's just something you just
Very human-like.
very.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, you know, another thing is if you did the same thing.
They're covered in hair just like the parents are, but shorter hair, very soft.
Yeah. You know, interesting thing I find about that is if it was a bear, you did the same thing to a bear cub, right?
Yep.
The mother bear would not only attack the cougar, but then turn around and start attacking you. And the fact
That's
that the
right.
Sasquatch did not, you know, even if the bear cub was attached to your leg, that bear would still attack you. You know, Sasquatch picked up on that, understood, and you know, placing its hand on your chest. You know, there was a comment that that means heart. You know, maybe a symbol of kindness, thank you, love. You know, it just shows the intelligence that they have, and choose to have, and the emotions that they can control. You know, seeing you next to its baby, that's anxiety, worry, fear. You know, maybe a little anger, but it's gratitude that it shows. Expresses gratitude. You know, that's intelligence. That's like human intelligence. So,
Exactly. It'd be
you know,
like
animals can do that, but not in that way. Showing gratitude.
Exactly. And I mean, when she put her hand on my chest, it was the gentlest thing. I mean, there was no slap. It was just a very gentle place the hand on you, like a mother showing gratitude for you helping her child out, how she would just gently put her hand on you and say thank you very much, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's very soft.
Oh yeah.
And that's you know, being such a big, massive creature, powerful creature, to be soft, you know, that takes intelligence, dexterity, and definitely the coordination to not squish you.
Exactly. And I mean, like I said, the only gesture I did was I was protecting with my thumb pointing back the way where the cougar was I was protecting your baby from the cougar. That was it. And for that, I got a very kind thank you. I learned later on, because of the area I was facing, that there was a family of them further up where I was facing, and she was actually part of that family group because I had run into the male more than once. I've had them do mock charges at me. Didn't scare me. I just kind of chuckled. I learned not to use my emotions when I'm around them. I learned to bury that down and to be very, very calm around them. And if you can do that, you'd be amazed at how close you can get to them. Because there's none of this, I show fear when I see them. Yes, the first time as an adult, I got to admit, I seen them, I had fear. I was scared shitless. But I learned to push that down until it was gone. Now I look at them and it's like I'm always calm around them. So they're not, they don't hide from me. They come out in the open. They're curious with some of them as to who I am, but they don't out and out hide from me. Like with most people, they don't go hiding and peeking around trees. They're out in the open. Right. Just like I'd be meeting any other person down the street going, hey, they're out in the open. They're not hiding from me. They don't view me as a threat, I guess.
Do they ever leave you any kind of gift?
Oh, yeah. I've had them leave me rocks, crystals, little things they've made. I've had them bring me food. Had a couple of them bring me a couple raccoons, but I can't see me eating raccoon. No.
Yeah.
Guess they thought I was hungry.
Do you ever leave
I've had them
gifts?
show me fish that they've caught in the river when the salmon are going up.
Do you ever leave them any gifts?
That's amazing. Oh, yeah. I've left them fruit. I've left a few vegetables. I don't know if they took them or unless I've been in, watched them take them. Otherwise, when I've left stuff, I don't know if a bear came along or a deer ate it. Well, you can usually tell if any other animal is eating it because there's always remnants of it somewhere in that area. Mm-hmm. I've left peanut butter. And the jar, the lid, all gone. And I know they like peanut butter because I watched them sit there, use their finger and just gorge themselves on a jar of peanut butter. So you know that they will take some of their food sources that they find and take them sometimes for themselves and sometimes for their family as well. So wherever their family, their little group is staying at, that's where they're going to be.
Yeah. With
a lot of the food sources. It's not just for themselves. It's also for their families.
Now with the musky smell that they give off, are they all pretty similar or is it different for each one, do you believe?
No, it's all basically the same musky smell.
Okay.
It's a very light musky smell because, like I said, I've been up right beside them. The smell is it's a slight musky smell that you would smell. It's hard to describe. Let me see. It's not like a bear, but close to it. Not like a wolf, but close to it. It's really hard to describe. It's just a musky smell.
Yeah.
Once you smell it, you don't forget the smell, but it's really hard to describe it. But they all basically have the same musky scent. Okay. The only time they have that really horrible smell, I believe, is that they put out is through glands. Like we have, for us, the glands that we have are in our armpits, which, when you sweat, they stink.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with them, except they do this like the chimps do. See, now the chimps have theirs in their forearm, and it's usually a warning to one of their own kind or to a human that they don't know that you're too close. You're far too close to than what you should be. And they'll use this as a warning. Because I found that usually if the stronger the odor that I can smell, if I get to the point where I'm going to gag, then that tells me they're within 10 feet of me or less.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the closer you get to stuff, you start gagging.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah, then they got to be within six feet of you at that point. And it's horrible. You're just ready to gag. You can't breathe through your nose. You got to learn to kind of breathe through your mouth to try and breathe. But it's only centralized in one area. If you take a couple steps forward or a couple steps back, the intensity of it is not so bad. You can actually breathe through your nose. I learned this 3 or 4 times. I figured this one out okay. That means they're in that one spot. The heaviest that over is, they're in that one spot right there, no more, within 6, 7 feet from you. Couple steps forward, it's lighter, it's still there, but not near as strong. So you can actually pinpoint where they are when they're using that.
Yeah, I've actually came across that smell one time. Actually, in Chad's area, it was like a line on the path. You can only smell it in like a foot line.
Yeah.
And, it smelled like kind of like a dirty sock foot smell. Is what I kind of reference it as.
Yeah, it's gross, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't super strong and not making me gag, but it definitely was not normal odor in the woods, and a stream, very centralized smell. It was very interesting and weird.
So you see now right there, that pinpointed exactly where it was. If you'd have stuck right in where that scent was and moved closer, you would have found it would have gotten stronger as you moved closer.
Yeah, we were trying to find it. It disappeared. I don't know. Maybe it crossed the trail, and that's why we could smell it across the trail or something, or it was lingering. Very interesting and very active spot actually too. So, but it's been about an hour and a half. I would love to actually. We'll have you back on to talk more. I mean, obviously we could do more, and very fascinating stuff. Very fascinating stuff, because I know you still have a lot of stuff that you presently are doing, and so we'll have you back on, talk more about that.
Yeah, this last year I was out on a couple of trips where I'm encountering them.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that next time, and thank you for coming on, and thank you for everyone in the chat. We had some great questions, great dialogue, and keeping it fun and friendly in there. So
yeah, it was real nice meeting you, Dale.
Oh, it's nice meeting you guys. I was worried about being a little nervous about this, but actually this is not so bad.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to let people know that I seem to be one of the lucky ones that actually can get as close to them as you would to your girlfriend. Stand right beside them.
Right. Real quick, would you call yourself a Bigfoot researcher, or are you just a guy who just happened to encounter this stuff?
At first, I was just a guy who used to encounter it. Now I am a researcher, because I avidly will go out. I know what to look for. I know what signs there are when they're in the area. Believe me, I know it, and I know how to react. Usually at that point, I'm dead calm.
Yeah. Well, I say that because do you have any videos or anything where people can watch, or do you have anything you want to plug?
Usually, I'm usually the tracker, the one who can find them. So anybody who comes along with me, I tell them, you're the camera guy. And I have with my buddy of mine who lives up in Gold River, which is northwest of the town that I live in now. And I've always used him as my cameraman. So he goes, you track better than I can. You know what to look for. I'll run the camera. Because the last time he went with me, yeah, we had encounters.
Awesome.
I found
awesome.
fresh crack. We chased this thing down right up to a point where I couldn't climb up a rock face that it had climbed up, and we were seconds behind it.
Again, it shows their incredible nature of these creatures. Well, that is all, folks. So we'll keep these stories for next time. Thank you all again for the wonderful chat, for hanging out with us. So we might do another show Saturday. Maybe we'll just hang out here with the chat. Maybe have some of you guys come on here if you want. So tune in for that. And with that, we'll see you guys later.